They're waiting for some more.
It's like 13 years after 13 years.
Turn, face the casket.
יקראני בעיניהו ימונוכי בצרח חצה וכבדהו אורך ימים אספיהו והרי בישועתי אורך ימים אספיהו והרי בישועתי
All bears, thank you very much. If you would rejoin your family.
I'm going to begin with the 121st Psalm of David, appropriately. Shir lamahalot esainai el heharim me'ayin yavo ezeri ezeri me'im Adonai ose shamayim va'aretz Al yiten lamot raglecha, al yanum shomrecha, hine lo yanum velo yishan shomer Yisrael. Adonai shomerecha, Adonai tzilcha yad yeminecha, yomam hashemesh lo yakeka, ve'areach b'halayla. Adonai yishmorcha mikol ra yishmor et nafshecha. Adonai yishmor tzedcha uvoecha me'ata ve'ad olam. I turn my eyes to the mountains. From where will my help come? My help comes from Adonai, maker of heaven and earth. Adonai will not let your foot give way. Your guardian will not slumber. The guardian of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. God is at your protection, a guardian at your right hand. By day the sun will not strike you, nor the moon by night. Adonai will guard you from all harm and guard your life. Adonai guards your going and coming, now and forever. In the book of Kohelet, it says that the eye never has its fill of seeing, young or old. Those who depart this life never see enough of the world, never complete their task, never cherish their loved ones enough, and how they yearn for yet another respite from a final summons, and how we yearn to have them close to us for another challenge in our lives, yet another joy, yet another precious moment together. We ask God to be now with the hearts that are broken, because whenever the parting comes, young or old, it comes far too soon. We ask God to console the family at this hour and to be near to them when light seems so distant, and to sustain them until a time of healing. We have come together sharing our sorrow as we bid farewell to Harry Wolfson, Yitzchak, Aaron, Ben Moshe, and Miriam, and we recall the blessings of his life, and we thank God for all that was good and true in his life, and for the precious memories which shall endure. It is my honor today to indicate the speakers on behalf of the family that were chosen, and Maxine is going to begin, followed by Elisa, words shared together by all the grandchildren. Maxine. I'll adjust this down for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Get close to it, though.
Is that okay?
A little closer so they can all hear you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Maxine, and I am the youngest child of my father and mother, or as my father always referred to me to everyone as, the baby of the family, or my baby. I certainly did not envision standing up to a microphone again just 2 months after my son Matthew and daughter-in-law Melissa got married. However, as life would have it, there are periods of joy in our lives and periods of sadness. Well, today is definitely a sad day in my life. I am both honored and privileged to stand here today to eulogize my father, Harry Wolfson, on behalf of myself and my brothers Howard and Michael. However, this eulogy really does not do justice to the man and the life that my father had for the past 99 years. So please reach out to my brothers and I during Shiva so we can share more of our stories about our father and his life. Since there is a 10 and 14-year age difference between my brothers and I, and no, I was not a mistake, as my mother told me many times throughout my life, I deferred to them on the early stages of my father's life that I was not a part of. My father was born on Roberts Street in downtown Toronto on July 19, 1922, just north of Kensington Market, to Minnie and Morris Wolfson. My father left school during the Depression years and worked for his parents, who owned a canteen and convenience store, delivering lunches to the factories in the Sterling Road area of Toronto. When he was 16, he went to work for H. Brown Silks, Inc., one of the largest textile operations in Toronto at the time. My father began by delivering textiles, also known as shmutas in Yiddish, up and down Spadina Avenue on a bicycle. He worked his way up to salesperson and was a highly respected individual in his trade. After this company closed down, Dad continued to work for a new company, I believe by the same people, called H. Brown Ribbons and Sales. For many years until he retired, he continued to work for this company, selling ribbons, bows, and gift wrap paper all over the GTA. My father was known around the city as a kind and enjoyable man to do business with. My father wore many hats throughout his life, but the one he wore proudest was his veteran hat. My father was a World War II veteran who, when called, served his country. He did basic training in Summerside, Prince Edward Island, and then was stationed on the small tip of Vancouver Island in Cole Harbour. He had framed and sitting on a small table in his living room a letter from the deputy of the district of Port Hardy Council, the mayor of the district of Port Hardy Council, wishing him a happy 98th birthday and telling him how many of the original buildings that were constructed in Cole Harbour for the Royal Canadian Air Force remain. Dad made sure everyone who came into the house saw this letter. My brother Michael told me we would often laugh about the fact that he was integral in protecting Canada from the Japanese invasion that never happened. For Dad, it was like camping for 2 years in the wilderness, but in reality, he was just doing his duty. When he returned home from war, he met and married my mother, Shirley Fruchman. I recently learned from my brother Michael, via my cousin Carol Baker, that my parents met in her parents' home, as my Uncle Joe, one of my mother's brothers, was the son-in-law of the man who owned H. Brown Silk, Inc. My dad was delivering something to my uncle for work, and my mother was watching over my cousin Carol at the time. She recalled how sparks flew when my mother, standing at the top of the stairwell, sorry, it's hard when your hands are cold. down at my dad standing in the doorway below and talked to him for the very first time. A few years after getting married, my parents started their family. My brother Howard was born first in 1949, my brother Michael in 1953, and myself in 1963. Shortly after my brothers were born, my parents moved into the new transformational neighborhood in the country known as Bathurst Manor. It was called Toronto's first suburban neighborhood. When my brothers moved into this house, which my father still lived in until the day of his death, there were cows in the backyard, and the farmer who sold the land for development still lived in the farmhouse across the street from my parents. In 1972, my brother Howard married my sister-in-law Pat and had a daughter Elisa, whom you will hear from shortly, and a son Mark. In 1990, I married my late husband Maurice, fondly known as Maury, and had a son Matthew and a daughter Jessica. In 1994, my brother Michael married his wife Lena and has 3 daughters, Jelena, Leah, and Rachel. Each grandchild held a special place in my father's heart, and each grandchild had their own unique relationship with their Zadie Harry. Please indulge me for just a little bit longer as I share some of my own memories of life with my father. Being so much younger than my brothers, I was told I was very spoiled and had a very different life with my parents than they had. I can remember and cherish endless vacations with my parents. The first was to NASA over Christmas time at the age of 5 years old. There were many trips to Toledo, Ohio for multiple family simchas for my mother's side of the family, as well as many trips to Florida, to Israel for my bat mitzvah, and of course Buffalo and Rochester, where we all shopped until we dropped. I remember my teddy bear father, who cried at the drop of the hat, cry when one of my professors at Western University during my graduation shared with him how his daughter stood up for herself when her skills and knowledge learned in social work were being taken advantage of by the individual in charge of her placement. I remember endless handyman jobs my father did for Maury and I in our first home on Mill Creek, as well as in our current home. In our first home, as well as in our current home on Mill Creek. Lastly, I remember my father running up to our house on Mill Creek one Pesach when the kids were young with his first aid kit when his daughter sliced her finger open on a sharp meat knife. My father said to me this past Saturday, when he clearly knew he would not be here for much longer on this earth, "You are a good daughter." To which I replied, "Of course I am. I had the best teachers, you and Mummy." My father was the kindest, good-hearted person around. He definitely could be crusty and often told it like it was, whether you wanted to hear it or not. My brother Michael, also a salesman in the food industry for many years, shared with me how our father taught him how to be a mensch, as they say in Yiddish, a person who treats people well and is always ethical. With multiple underlying health conditions, there was a belief that my father would not survive beyond May 2021. However, our father surprised us all, proving to be a medical miracle. He lived to see his 99th birthday, which was a wonderful event in itself, and one of his grandsons get married. My brothers and I have no doubt that my father would not be here today if it was not for the unconditional love and support that he received from his full-time, 7-day-a-week, 24-hour caregiver, Nieva, who had been caring for my dad for almost 8 years. Daddy, I will miss you every Tuesday. I will miss you every Tuesday and Friday and any other chance I could get when I came to visit you. I will miss kissing you on the cheek and or kepi, head in Yiddish, when it came to saying goodbye. I will miss you saying, when I said when I will be coming back to see you again, "I'll be here," or "I'm not going anywhere." Most of all, though, I will miss you sitting in your easy boy chair by the front window in the living room, waving me and Jessica goodbye as we waved goodbye back to you every time we left your house. Rest in peace, Daddy. You certainly earned this rest after 99 years of life on this earth. We all love you and will miss you terribly.
The relationship between grandparents and grandchildren is most often a very special one. From the minute grandchildren are born, grandparents' sole purpose becomes making their grandchildren happy. They become your biggest, and loudest in Zadie's case, cheerleaders, always ready with open arms to embrace you with enormous hugs and kisses. For Mark, Jelena, Matthew, Leah, Jessica, Rachel, and myself, Zadie's love filled our hearts through and through. Zadie was always there for us, often playing chauffeur, picking us up from school, taking us to doctor and dentist appointments, even picking us up at our houses to bring back to Booby and Zadie's home. Many holidays, PA days, even days when we weren't feeling well, you could find us at Booby and Zadie's house. There was nothing more wonderful for Zadie than visits from his grandchildren and other family members. His smile was never larger than when he got a chance to spend time with us. He would ask us what was new and listen to all our stories. Once we were done, Zadie would grandly recall all the visitors and callers that he had received recently, knowing in his heart how much he was loved and respected by all. As my cousin Jessica said, he was the happiest when we visited him, as the second we walked in the door and stepped up to his chair, his face would light up. For Zadie, there was nothing better than watching the Toronto Blue Jays play. Whether it was from the grandstand at Exhibition Stadium to any TV he could find in anybody's house, he always loved rooting for our team. When the Jays were playing on Friday night, we even had to eat dinner quicker so Zadie can turn on the game. There was nothing better about spending Shabbat dinner at Booby and Zadie's house. You had to come over early so that you had time to play, either outside in the front or at the back of the house, or downstairs in the basement where the best gently used toys from generations past were located. Then we sat down to dinner, gulping down every delicious course made by our Booby, while Zeta sat and gleamed at his wife, children, and grandchildren so proudly from the head of the table. Before you left, Zeta always offered you chocolates or candies hidden from my grandmother in stashes around the house from his frequent trips to John Vince. He told everybody he bought it for us, his grandchildren. We all knew who was really devouring it. Zadie also loved technology, and it helped him to communicate with family all over the world. He was ahead of his time with his cassette tape exchange with his sister Batya in Israel. Years later, his computer allowed him to speak with Auntie Bessie every day over instant messaging. The same computer which entertained him endlessly with solitaire. And then there was his cell phone. Nothing was better at the end of a good meal than taking out his cell phone and scrolling through his contacts. When you went to Booby and Zeta's, there were two places you would most often find our grandfather, either on the veranda or at the back in the garden. He loved sitting on the veranda, talking with loved ones, or just watching all that passed by. But in his heyday, one of his favorite places to be was in his garden. He took immense pride every time we got to take home some of his fruits and vegetables. From apple and pear trees to the cukes, zucchinis, and cherry tomatoes, he loved to share with all. So many Yom Kippur fasts were broken on the walk back from shul to Booby and Zadie's house, as Zadie began pulling out of his talit bag what seemed to be a never-ending amount of apples from his tree for us to eat. Gardening was his passion, and it truly gave him joy. In earlier years, you would never find my grandfather without his camera equipment. At every event, he was taking pictures. Back in the day, there was nothing more exciting than seeing home movies on the 8mm projector on a huge white screen in his office. When video cameras became popular, there was Zadie with VCR tapes at hand. There was nothing more special to him than his photograph albums and videos. And because of him, we will have a treasure trove of sacred memories that we can cherish forever. For Mark, Jelena and Andrew, Matthew and Melissa, Leah, Jessica, Rachel, and myself, the loss of our Zeta Harry will be extremely difficult for us to bear. He was a true light in our lives, always there to make us smile and give his unconditional love and support. Although he had to leave his loved ones here, it's comforting to know that he's now with all those he loved in the past before him, especially our booby Shirley, who he has probably annoyed like 17 times since he's left us. Zeta, we love you and we will miss you forever.
When Maxine called me yesterday and told me that Harry had passed, because she called me days before and told me he was going to pass, I didn't believe it even. Because a year ago when I went to visit him, you told me he was going to pass, but he didn't. And he was around for another year. And I remember on that visit, walking into the door and expecting to see someone who was in their final days. But that isn't what I saw. I saw a man with a beautiful smile sitting there. And the first words that came out of his mouth were, "When am I going to get to go to shul again?" And then he turned to Maxine and he said, "When are you taking me to shul?" And he must have said that about 10 times. But he asked about the shul. And he cared, because Harry was I found out today, one of the earliest members. I mean, before Beth David even had a place on Shepherd, before they moved to Yeomans, they had a place right down the street from the house that began, and he was already involved at that time. And I think that when I think of the images that come to mind for me personally about Harry, it's what was important to him, what was humorous about him, what made him smile, what brought him joy, and what brought us laughter, and what will continue. He loved to talk about the price that he paid for the house when he bought it in Bathurst Manor at that time, and how we all should have bought 10 of them then. He's right. And I loved hearing that, because it reminded me when I visited Harry, I felt like I was visiting my own dad, because my dad would have a similar conversation. We paid, and and we should. But Harry was a glass half full person. He didn't fetch to me once during the visit, "I'm not well, I can't walk, I'm not feeling well, I can't see, I didn't hear the complaints. And there's an expression that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. When you see the 3 children with Howard and Michael and Maxine, all kind. And that's not always the case. The family were his jewels. That's what he loved to brag about. Didn't brag, but he liked to tell the stories about my grandchildren, you should see. And that's what he wanted to be most proud about. So he truly was the richest man in the world, because he had good children. He said it over and over and over again. He had wonderful grandchildren. He had a wonderful marriage to Shirley. He had a wonderful life. And when you think of 99 years, some people would say frivolously, well, he's 99. It's not enough. We have the expression, ad mea ve'esrim, but we also add sometimes the words kemo esrim, that it's not good enough to live to be 120. It's better if you can live to be 120 and be like 20, but it's not easy to do either. But you know what? You'll always be able to carry him with you in your hearts, because from Elisa's words, you stole all my words from me. When you talked about how he would go into the little corners of the house and find all the chocolates that he bought at John Vince, and then he'd say, I bought them for you. Doesn't matter why he bought them. He shared them with you. He wanted to give them to you. He wanted to see you enjoy. He wanted to see smiles when he sat at the head of the table, whether it was Rosh Hashanah, Pesach, a breaking of the fast. To see his grandchildren around him at a table brought him the greatest nachas and the greatest joy. That was everything to him. The ethics of our father says, Ezehu Ashir Hasamech Bechoko. Who is rich? And the sages say, the one who is happy with their lot in life. That's Harry Wolfson. Yehi Zichra Baruch. Because he knew what was truly important in life. And what was truly important in life was the sharing of something, an ingredient that you can't replace with all the money and all the cars and fancy watches in the world, and that is the gift that he gave you of time. The time that you shared with him is what you shared today through your speeches. That was the memory of all of the times and all of the occasions that you got to be with him. That gift of time which can never be replaced, time which once it's gone, it's never back again. We never get it back. Maybe I should stop talking because I'm spending too much time talking. But nevertheless, I'll conclude by saying that it's that gift that will stay with you forever, and you would never trade that for anything in the world. Tehi nishmato tzura b'tzura chayim. May his sweet soul be bound up in the bond of life eternal, and may he rest in peace. We're going to perform an act of chesed shel emet. Chesed meaning kindness, emet meaning truth. And why we do this is because we don't want to leave it to other people, to everyone else. The workers here are here to help us, but we have to take responsibility by placing earth onto the grave ourselves, a blanket of love for Harry. And we do so by using the back of the shovel first. It's called the shinui, a little bit different, to place the earth on differently, to say it's not like gardening. It's not like just shoveling snow, but it's doing it with love and care. So we use the back of the shovel for one scoop, and then you can use the front of the shovel to place several scoops of earth onto the grave lovingly. And then we'll say the memorial prayer after that. Four shovels, and come forward carefully if you wish to perform the mitzvah.
my
I know.
daughter, when she was
So
a
they
high school
started.
kid,
Yeah.
I had to say you can't be on that because you don't know who they're talking to.
Yeah.
As a kid. I used to
So
think when I heard that word.
3 o'clock in the afternoon, we would sit down at the computer, and it was like 11 o'clock in the
You're
day.
kidding.
And they, every day, every
To do
day.
that, that was 80 who could do that. Is unbelievable.
Yeah, yeah.
I did that now when you think
Every
about
day,
it. Not
every day,
everybody
3
has to do
o'clock,
it.
we'd be on the computer with Russia. And then the line is that they were senior of each other. Of course, they're hard of hearing. And they'd be yelling at each other like siblings. They were 10 years old.
Love it. I love it. See, but that stuff stays with you forever.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah. So sometimes I would go over there at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and you see Betcha and the two of them going at it together.
Earlier on, we did well. Right after the class, I used to drive by the house and I would stop and get some pictures because he always was on the porch.
Yeah.
He loved to watch
yeah.
us. He would come and he would keep going. He was always on the porch. He
Yeah.
loved it. And when you said that on the veranda all the time,
Yeah.
it was so cute. 'Cause I used to drive by and I would stop and talk to him because I lived just down the road on Searle. So I would drive there and I'd go past and I'd say, oh, let's stop off Harry. So I would stop and he was always on the veranda. He said, oh, I just watching the people go by. Look, they're doing
knew
construction
everything.
up the street. He
Yeah.
knew everything.
He knew everything that was going on.
Yeah.
He watched the ladies walk by.
He was a real gossip.
Oh, yeah.
He did gossip, but it's lazy gossip.
Sweet. I love it.
Yeah, yeah. He was a bit of a yenta. He was a bit of a
So am
yenta.
I. We got along so well.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right?
He called me Patricia. Patricia. Are you coming, Patricia? You have this twinkle in his eye.
Yeah. It's funny, I saw even that friggin' Monica wrote about the candy all over.
Yeah.
I didn't
They
know.
could all go and go and get some bike stuff. It's all over the house. And when you find it, it was lying around. They'll remember it.
Keep it handy.
Yeah.
I said that. That's good.
Be less
Try to get on this side. Oh, it looks like somebody put some sweets on top of it.
Candy. I was remember this diabetic and what the hell? Give it what he wants.
Right.
At one point, I said to
some
Howard,
Yeah.
I said, are you kidding? Give him the top.
Yeah.
Hey, the yours taking. Pardon? The yours You know, when you listen to Howard's voice, you hear Harry. It sounds just like
Yeah.
Yeah.
He always answered the phone. Hello. He answered the phone. When he picked up the phone, he was like, hello. Yeah. 99 years.
In March. Pickaxe.
He was so happy on that day when everybody came by.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my God, he was thrilled.
No, Mark.
These 4 sheep of books that were with me, within shovels of this.
Hasn't heard it?
I don't know, but you have to remember that we were on an ultra cover.
Yes. I don't know. Whatever. Do you want
Put it in the ground first.
Originally it started because they wanted to put stones around the grave to mark the Kohanim shouldn't go there. So the Kohanim until after the rocks become tamei, they become impure. So you put rocks around it. Then it became a tradition that you put rocks on top as a symbol that you'll continue to build upon the foundation that they started. The mark in occasion it came, but then every time you put a new stone, you're building upon this foundation. It's one of the other interpretations.
When you say the cement, the Velcro,
Yeah.
they hold a special, they hold rush on it. So the Velcro,
I mean, for their lives.
satisfies with their lot. The question is, what is their lot? The lot
everything within your life. That's the challenge. Can also mean that your sniffers, your lots, unfortunately, there's lots of there's lots of
Daddy, you're 73 years old.
How?
Howard, you inherited your father's voice. When I hear you talk, I hear that.
They also say it looked like him. I inherited his good luck. No, this is all mine.
Really? Oh, I didn't know that. What section is this? Oh, you're part of our good luck.
That was his job.
Now you're cool.
My feet are frozen. It looks nice on the outside, but my toes are like ice cold and
Yeah, where are your parents buried? On the end of the road.
See where the wood is here? Yep, it's all going to be covered.
We're covered in the fence?
this end is covered.
I'll push it down.
Another fence between us.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
El male rachamim shochen bamromim ametzemenu chanukana lekanfe hashechina b'malot kedoshim uteorim kezohar harakia mahazihirim et nishemot. Yitzchak Aaron ben Moshe v'Miriam shalach leolamo began eden temnuchato ana bala rachmim astirehu beseter kenafecha leolamim utzeror bitzeror achayim nishbata Adonai hu nachalatam v'yanuchu v'shalom al mishkavotam v'nomar amen. O God, exalted and full of compassion, grant perfect peace in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure to the soul of Harry Wolfson, Yitzchak Aaron ben Moshe and Miriam, who has gone to his eternal home. Master of mercy, we beseech you to remember all the mitzvot that he performed in this land of the living. May he be bound up in the bond of life eternal and rest in peace. And now we'll say Mourner's Kaddish together. Yid Kadal. Amen. Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabba Mevarach Leolam Alamei Almaya. Romam V'Itnasei. Brichu. Tushbechata. Amiran. Amen. Chaim Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Amen. Shalom b'mromav hu yaseh shalom. Amen. And now I'm going to ask some of you to just come with me on this side here, not the immediate mourners, but just we'll form a line, a corridor, so the family can walk through between us to receive the words of comfort. Someone just join me on this side here. A few on this side, a few on that side. There you go. And we'll ask you to walk through and we'll say, Hamakom Yenachem Etchem Betoch Sha'ar Avei Tzion Yerushalayim. May you be comforted among the mourners for Zion and Yerushalayim. Amen. Okay.
On behalf of Benjamins, I want to thank you all for making the effort to come out today. And please keep sharing stories, keep talking to each other, keep connecting virtually or by whatever means you feel comfortable, because that's more important than ever, especially to reach out to the family, remember them. And they want to hear your stories and they want to tell their stories, so it's a good way to carry the legacy forward.